This is Jordan Grace, and you're listening to the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
BWB, this is One Nation Radio. You better get it right. Rich Latta, James Boyd came to give them life. The Blackest Wrestling Podcast has come to kick all ass and drop it 6 feet if they kicking trash. Word, let me welcome y'all to something different. And if you dig it, man, you should let some friends listen. We be getting it in, this on the regular dude. Ravish and flow, but this shit rude. See, James don't rap, so I had to break it down. The whole network, man, we coming for the crown. Raps in the columns, I keep them both covered. Making the beats too, so the listeners can bump it. Hit us with the rating, yeah, I'm saying it's a 5. Before you hit it, talk, bob your head side to side. It's One Nation Radio, and this is the beginning. It's Rich, and I'm here with James. It's time to listen to One Nation.
We got to unleash the power of the pyramid.
This is Mike Sempervive from WrestlingObserver.com. Check me out on Wrestling Observer Live every day. And also check out your boys, Rich and James, on One Nation Radio.
Hi, this is Kenny Omega. We're listening to One Nation Radio. Check it out, guys. These guys know what's up. Big Kenny Omega fans, that's all that counts to me. Goodbye and good night. Bang.
Welcome to the September 1st edition of One Nation Radio here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. I am your host, Rich Latta. Of course, here with my co-host, James Boyd. James, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Just saw a lot of wrestling yesterday. A lot of good wrestling, too.
Yes. And joining us from the Chairshot.com, a longtime guest of One Nation Radio, Mr. Chad Matthews, the Doc. What's going on, Chad?
Not much, man. Trying to recover from a lot of wrestling and football watching yesterday. I didn't sleep that well the night before. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night. So I'm excited to talk about this show because it'll get my adrenaline back up. Then I'll crash in a couple of hours.
Yeah, man. Originally, we were going to do this thing like later, but circumstances changed, and we're here about 5 hours earlier than normal. So, yeah, man, we watched lots of wrestling yesterday, in addition to All Out, which was, the marquee event of the day. Before that, it was NXT UK, and before that, it was New Japan Royal Quest. So, real quick before we get into the All Out review, which is, kind of what we came here for, Walter versus Tyler Bate. My God. A match that stands up with the best of the year in any promotion. I went ahead and slapped 5.5 on this one myself, and I think that this was a statement, it was a message, and it was a hell of a match between a guy in Tyler Bate who's as young as anybody and as good as anybody in the world, and then he's fucking Walter. Chad, did you happen to catch this match?
I did. I made it a point to make sure that I saw that one. I didn't catch the entirety of TakeOver Cardiff, but I made sure to watch that. And I'll tell you what, man, there's been few matches that I've watched in a long time that were as long as this match, but that didn't feel like it. That was one of my major takeaways from it, is that, how long was it? Do you have an official clock-in time on that sucker?
While you guys go ahead, I will find the numbers on that.
I'm thinking 40 minutes.
It's NXT. It's a TakeOver main event, so probably did go well over 30. I love the match. It's one of the best matches of the year. It's one of my 5 favorite matches of the year, regardless of outside of what I think other people's personal opinions on how well it was structurally put together. It's one of my 5 favorite matches of the year. Walter, there's a lot of wrestling out there. Unfortunately, I do not get around to NXT UK as much as I should. But between the main event the semi-main event in New York for TakeOver New York and this, Walter has had 2 absolute war type of bangers that are just simplistic and brutal and so easy to just grab you by the neck and say, pay attention to me. So I love what he's done on these big matches. I wonder what he's doing on the actual show when it comes to defenses and stuff, because these matches are so brutal. It's almost like he should be squash dudes until it's time for the money matches.
So that match went 42 minutes and 12 seconds.
Didn't feel like it, though.
Nope. Did not
feel like it.
And
there's
go ahead, chat.
I was just going to say, there's kind of a natural dichotomy to me. If you look at NXT UK, the dichotomy is between Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. And I think of it as in its similar terms as Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart back in the day. Tyler Bate being Shawn Michaels. And I always really enjoyed watching Bret Hart against a bigger guy, putting him in that underdog role. But I always preferred seeing Shawn Michaels in that role. And to me, Tyler Bate took what they started in TakeOver New York with Pete Dunne and just took it to a whole different level. I mean, it was, to me, that caliber, that kind of style that they wrestled, whew, that's one of the best matches that I've seen in a while. Not just this year, but in quite a while.
Yeah, it was funny because at the end of the match when Pete Dunne and Trent Seven got in there with him, I was like, nah, man, I don't need to see Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne helping each other up. Like, that's I don't want to see Bret Hart helping Shawn Michaels up. I made a joke on the spot like that as well. So that dichotomy, that's spot on with those guys. But yeah, this was a war. Go out of your way, bend over backwards to go see this if you have not seen it. So carve out an hour and figure it out. So
yeah, one of the best match of the weekend in my opinion, and honestly, I mean, it's one of the best matches of the year in all the wrestling that I've seen. It sticks up with the best of the Ishii stuff, the best of the final of the Super Juniors, the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. It's on par with that level of stuff. It was an incredible match.
What else? Was there anything else on the UK show, James? Because you paid a little bit more attention than I did. I was taking some beats.
The triple threat tag match. That match was incredible. It was very much, and somehow Andrews and Morgan Webster have turned themselves into a makeshift DIY. They pretty much, if for those that may remember or not, but for me anyway, the first time I ever saw DIY together was Brooklyn 2, and they proceed to put on two or three near falls that would have been perfect classic. This is an all-time great finish that they kicked out of, and you're just like, these dudes are geniuses. The four people there in the ring, they managed to do that with Andrews and Morgan Webster, and eventually end up winning. It was incredible. I'm sorry, they didn't. It was incredible. So It was really fun because Gallus was in there, and Gallus got no reaction, little to no reaction. Drake and the Grizzly Young Vets, they got little to no reaction. It was basically built around, we want the white baby faces to win, and we pop big for them, and then if it looks like they're about to lose, they reacted in a similar fashion, the opposite reaction, and it was great. So that match would have gotten a 4.5. It stacks up with any of the Undisputed Era stuff that did over the last year and a half on takeovers. I enjoyed the Mastiff stuff, but it's a last man standing match. It's a last man standing match. The Cesaro Dragunov match, that is probably a 4 flats match. It really picks up at the end, especially. Tony Storm match. I feel like it was on par with the Hikaru Shida and Rio match. It probably was a more physical bout, actually. So yeah, I mean, it was overall that was a very good takeover show.
Tight work, man. No mention of Noam Dar. I mentioned so.
they had a good match. I mean, there was nothing bad on the takeover show.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. So let's do what we came here for. So All Out, AEW with their second pay-per-view, last one before the TV. We have a new champion established. We have some storylines coming out of this. Overall, Chad, what were your thoughts on there? I caught a couple of your social media posts. Be interested to hear extended thoughts on that. I actually haven't got to the Doc Says yet today.
Well, I thought it was an awesome show from an in-ring standpoint. I thought it was really good. The first hour and a half, I was just blown away by. I think SCU they just have the magic sauce when it comes to opening matches in this day and age. They don't overstay their welcome, but they're just action-packed and innovative. And what they did with Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt was a blast. And then Kenny Omega and Pac. followed up by the Cracker Barrel Clash, which I would be happy to see them bring back
every year,
or every pay-per-view for that matter. That kind of stuff. I know it can be difficult to watch and it makes some people uncomfortable, but I'm not one of those people who's made uncomfortable by it to the point of being offended by anything that they do. I mean, if that's what they want to do, it's a different stylistic type deal, and I enjoy the heck out of it. So to that point in the show, I was like, man, this is great. I'm loving it. And then as the back end of the show took place, my feelings got a little bit more mixed. All in all, I had a blast with it. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I was god-awfully dog-tired by the time that main event ended. And so I think we got a lot out of this from an in-ring standpoint. I think we got a legitimate match of the year candidate out of it, and one of the greatest stunt brawl ladder matches I've ever seen in the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. I mean, that was insane. If there is a ladder match out there that has that earns the title of being more insane than that, then point me to it, because I've not seen it. Beyond that, I think there's a difference between what they accomplished in the ring and what they accomplished as a product, and I'm a little bit less excited about what they accomplished as a product than I am as what they accomplished in the ring, if that makes sense.
Totally. James?
I thought that the show at the beginning was great. I thought that at the end it was very good, and somewhere in the middle, probably once we got the Evil Uno stuff, I forgot Dark Order, the Dark Order, and the Hikaru Shida and Riho match. I thought that was like the point where it's like, okay, due to the car placement, you kind of set them up to kind of die on the vine there. But nothing was bad on the show. I would actually say everything was good on the show. It's just I feel like they're in a weird spot to where they're trying to have it both ways. Like they're trying to either, with the last three matches being like the four biggest matches, and also putting the Kenny and Pac match on. Actually, it's Pac, as we found out today or last night. But putting that second, like you kind of have tried to goose it to where like you're trying to be half New Japan, the way you lay out a card, and half WWE, where you try to spread out all of the top matches. And I feel like you can't do it halfway, either all in one way or the other. So they need to kind of figure that out, because it kind of the match out of the cards made it to where it was less enjoyable. So they kind of got to go back to the drawing board to figure out what their identity really is.
So I had a feeling on this show. I thought that the way that, like, because when it ended, I was like, I feel like this was a better card, like watching it, than Double or Nothing. And then I was like, well, what made Double or Nothing so special? Because if you think about when Double or Nothing happened, we had NXT TakeOver 25, which I think kicked its ass in the ring, like, but it didn't have that feeling. And in Double or Nothing, they were gonna only get that feeling, that new car smell, that one time, and it's gonna be hard to like consistently maintain that. And I think as they've gone on through their other shows, it's like, okay, yeah, now it's less about this history making moment, and it's more like, all right, can we just deliver? And I thought, just as a straightforward wrestling show, like, it's kicked ass. So, but yeah, I guess we can we can start at the pre-show, because the pre-show was notable, actually. We had a couple different things happen. We had the Women's Battle Royal, Nyla Rose emerging victorious, along with the entries of several of James and I's favorite wrestlers from the women's independents. I lost my mind when Mercedes Martinez came out at number 21. My only wish is that we could get her WWE theme music imported here, so I could have fully lost it. But Nicole Savoy was there. Of course, we had what was her name? Tennille Dashwood. We had lots of folks in there. B. Priestley. What did you guys make of the Battle Royal?
Go ahead, Chad.
I'm going to defer to you guys on this, man. I mean, this is sort of a conscious choice that I've had to make with shows like that AEW is putting out there. Is somewhere there's got to be a step back, because I don't have the attention span these days for 5 hours.
Gotcha.
So I voluntarily decided to just kind of half-assed glance at it from time to time while I was helping put the kids to bed and entertain a guest. And so I can't really speak critically on it at all because I really didn't pay that close of attention to it. And what I did seemed like it was fun and maybe a little bit better produced than the original match of this type that they did a couple of months ago. But beyond that, I don't really have a whole lot to add on this part of the conversation.
James?
Yeah. Okay. So before the show started, or leading up to the show the week before, I said to myself, okay, or I said to I think Rich and a few other people that if they fail to make it was on the show.
I think you said like pretty much everyone that that we wanted, like essentially they ended up getting.
Well, yeah. Well, real quick, I was saying like if this setup or the way they've arranged this battle royal fails in the way that it did with the men at Double or Nothing, then they probably just scrap this idea and just move on from the whole concept entirely. I mean, just move on. So it turned out that there actually was something to do well out of this, and they figured this out. So I'm not as bad. I thought it was good. I thought it was good overall. They had people that weren't ready and were green. They did a good job of highlighting what they can do and then showing and then trying to hide what they can't do, which is a point of booking, right? So from that perspective, I thought it was a success. The winner was perfectly fine. I'm now more concerned about the winner now that I know who was the winner of the women's match, because I thought it was cool for either one of them to be in the match, but both of them, it doesn't really make much sense to me that they're both going to be in that match, but whatever. But generally, I we talked about that last week as far as like pretty much most of the people that we thought were on the American Independence or just around that were people that have value or people that are very good wrestlers, they pretty much all got into this thing. So it's cool to see as opposed to them just like importing a bunch of wrestlers from Japan, which is, I mean, there are a bunch of Joshis. There are so many high quality Joshis that it's incredible. But you can hire the entire WWE women's roster 5 times over with that level of talent, 4 times probably. But you have to deal with people that and also the promo stuff. So I'm glad that they brought in the best of what we had on our own country to try to get this to work. And with people that, and they also use people that WWE has also kind of seen and highlighted, but they don't have much of a use for them for whatever reason, which is seems to be a totally aesthetic choice. So I'm glad they're really leaning into. We want the talent. We don't give a damn about the other stuff, the other BS stuff.
Right. So with Nyla Rose getting the big win, of course, there's a she's going to be facing Riho. We'll get to that later on, and that was a shock, and it kind of blew up all the Britt Baker's on all the posters theories that were out there and everything like that. Looks like the women's division is very deep. If they can retain at least half of the people that they brought in just for the battle royal, I think we're looking at a very a strength in AEW. But moving on from that, Private Party versus Angelico and Jack Evans, and this was Rich Lattice Pro Wrestling. This was fast paced flips. This was people going out and making themselves stars. This was the previous, work from Private Party and Angelico and Jack Evans coming to fruition, carrying in that credibility, and people were excited to see them. And I thought this blew the doors off the Best Friends Dark Order match.
Yeah, I totally agree. It does say something for the lack of over that the Dark Order is, because it's a lot of people just haven't connected to it, and we talked about that in previous shows, but they pretty much went out there and did a version of some type of version of 4 athletic people just doing almost everything they possibly can to entertain you between Evans and Angelico and Isaiah and Mark, and I thought it was a great match. And for the people that that have seen them before and have talked about how polished they are or not as wrestlers, from a person that's watched a shit ton of wrestling, to me, either the person that produced that thing needs to do all the matches, or like these people, have stepped up their game loads, and since the last time, a lot of people that are critics like Meltzer or wherever have seen them, because they look like they can do pretty much anything.
Yeah. I don't know, what these dudes are missing to,
I mean, look, people always improve. That's what happens when you get in the ring with better wrestlers and stuff, and you work more days and everything, right? Like we talked about it with, especially with why we think our Joshi wrestlers are better than a lot of our American women is they get more dates and they wrestle more talented people, right? And they also train a lot more. So like that, but that all comes into play. Just we don't see what goes on behind. We don't know how we don't know how the sausage is made. So we only going off what our eyes tell us. And our eyes told us that like these dudes either have improved greatly or somebody just made a bad, judgment or bad identification of what they can do.
In this AEW Tag Team Division, we got a surprise later on. Josh has mentioned from Keeping It Strong Style, he thinks it's the most talented tag team division that's ever been put together in one company at any time, like 1 through whatever, whatever rank you want to do. So I'm interested to see, that the tag team tournament, you got Young Bucks and Private Party in round 1, week 2. I suggest everyone check that out. I love their match from House of Glory. So, but on to the main card so we can get Chad back in on this thing. So, yeah, man. So we opened up with the hot 6-man opener, 2 fan favorite teams, the newly named Jurassic Express. The fans did not, go up in uproar about that name, which was a awesome sign. And also SCU, of course, the folks that should open every show for AEW for like the next 5 years, or as long as Christopher Daniels can stand up. And whenever I see Christopher Daniels come out to the ring just bopping left and right, like I just start dying laughing. Like it's the funniest thing in the world. Chad, I'm gonna throw it to you first. Should AEW get a trios division? Like, because these things are like, these things are awesome right here.
They are, and they, with what happened later on in the show with Orange Cassidy joining the Best Friends, you're starting to put together some tight knit little trios factions, and the commentators even used that expression at one point. So I'm all for it. I mean, they've got a very deep tag team division. So it makes sense to me to utilize that as much as you can, because one of the things I take away from my initial impressions of this brand is that for the time being, its strength is its tag team division. I personally, I'm of the opinion, and we'll get into this more later, that the women's division is fine. It's got a lot of depth of talent, but it doesn't have a lot of stars yet. And stars are what really make that division and push it to the forefront. It doesn't have those yet. And the main event division's got a lot of potential pieces, but it's not all gelling together yet. Everything seems to be gelling together with the tag team division. So that seems to be the thing that's going to draw a lot of fans in from the outside that aren't really fully on board with what WWE's doing, but really have interest in watching wrestling. Those early weeks of that TNT show, I would feature that tag team division, that tag team tournament heavily. If you can't feature them all, by all means throw together a trios tournament, because what SCU has shown that they can do in the early part of their run in AEW is get the crowd hot right from the get-go, come out, cut that little promo, do their shtick as past factions have done so well, and then go out there and just tear it up with athletic matches that last about 10 to 12 minutes. It's perfect for what modern pro wrestling needs to kick off the show. Doesn't have to be classic matches out there, but damn, they're certainly getting close to putting on borderline classics when they go out there. Opening matches at their finest in the modern era. I loved it. I thought it was a great way to kick off the show. And also really, really got to say a lot about Luchasaurus and how over that guy is already, and how good Jungle Boy is at such a young age. He reminds me of a smaller Brian Pillman 30 years after the Flying Brian phenomenon began. So there's a lot to like about this match.
James, with Luchasaurus, like, just talk about how he like what do you make of Luchasaurus? Like, obviously, he's got a mask on, and you got to kind of explain what he is, but like, just as a raw talent, like, what are we looking at with this guy? Because you would think, you know, it's like, where's he been? You know,
dude. I mean, I did not watch.
How big of a pickup is this? Like, if they just have this dude just waiting in the wings.
Yeah. So Caleb, part of a Social Suplex. He mentioned, or he kind of bemoaned the fact that like there were no quote unquote big guys or hosses or whatever else, or powerhouse type wrestlers in AEW, or there were very few of them. And the one that there was to point out was Luchasaurus, and the fact that Luchasaurus is super over at the time. And you know, you kind of think with that, with the gimmick that he has, that is kind of limiting. But if the crowd is going that crazy and loves it, at least the there in the arena, then you think that there's some type of something that's translatable there to the TV. But I mean, for me, every time I see him go out there and he just like, kicks the shit out of people, I think is incredible. Now, as far as like finding out that he was once in WWE's developmental and it didn't work out, and he may have been the person that turned in Bill Tamad and everything else, so that's why he's not in WWE. I'm thinking like, well, they damn sure missed the pose on him, because you see what he does. You see what he does for stretches of time, and you're thinking like, why is this dude not wrestling Roman Reigns at a WrestleMania?
Yeah, he's I want to say he's 34 years old now, so like he's, you know, at that age where you can go with him. You know, he's matured in the business. He's, you know, his body's right, and he's, you know, got some quality years in front of him still. And you know, as you mentioned with Jungle Boy, like they started calling him Jungle Jack Perry, which I liked because it transitions him out of what Jungle Boy would sound like, and then you get that Jack Perry connection with his father and everything like that, and then his own, like, you know, being young and having the young heartthrob wrestlers, which is something we don't really see in America too often anymore.
Not since like the territory days kind of wrapped up, yeah.
Right, and then like think in 5 years when he's 27 years old, like the amount of credibility that he's gonna have with this audience. So it'll be interesting to see how everyone's positioned. Marco Stunt did eat that pin though. Strong booking move there from AEW.
Yeah. that is very much if you watch New Japan or you watch Stardom, it's like, okay, well, you have Marco Stunt is a young lioness, whatever else. So we are going to protect these other two people by having him eat that pin, which is smart.
Chat.
I want to ask you guys a question. This has been on my mind since watching the show and actually having a conversation with the guy I was watching it with about Luchasaurus. This is a company that has the opportunity to sort of establish the expectations of their presentation. For years now, we've had guys over in WWE like Triple H saying, if you're not in this business to be the world heavyweight champion, then you should get out. I don't know that I've ever really agreed with that statement. What's wrong with someone like Luchasaurus coming in and just being a phenomenally over tag team wrestler? So my question to you guys is do you guys want to see there be a dichotomy that develops in AEW where we're not necessarily defining the main event as the target that everybody's trying to reach, and that you can have guys stick around in the mid-card scene for a couple of years and just be over and let them do what they can do there? And if it translates to the world wants to see Luchasaurus get to the top, then it'll happen. But if it doesn't happen, then it's okay for a Luchasaurus to be in the tag team division for a couple of years and then maybe phase out and go somewhere else. I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
For me, I think that it doesn't. I feel like ultimately, if you can get people to want to see who fill in the blank, whoever it is, no matter what they do, and they can do something as far as do something compelling to where you can see them in a clash against somebody else. That's the win. Everything else besides that is whether it's for a title or it's a blood feud or it's a betrayal or it is an exhibition. All that stuff is stuff that you put besides point. It's like, do you want to see it? And if you can see it, how do you present it to where you can try to get your the people that are your hardcore fan base to just enjoy it? And I mean, for the most part, it seems that they have a lot of goodwill built up with their fan base because pretty much anything they do gets over, aside from like really like the Dark Order and like the Librarian stuff. So for me, it really comes down to try whatever you want as long as you can make it respectable and something that ultimately can be transitioned out of into something else. If you want to make some type of dichotomy between this is main event level stuff and this is just the fun stuff, cool. But ultimately, like, I think ultimately what they're trying to give you is variety and whatever people tend to like. I mean, a lot of stuff is things that people haven't really seen, because a lot of this is pretty much the American indies kind of given a huge spotlight in other parts of the world, whether it's the Joshi stuff or it's the OWE stuff. So I think it's variety, and it's not just the variety in the sake of like how, you know, Vince or Hunter would talk about it. Is really more or less like trying to just grab all the talent so nothing ever can start an uprising. I think there's actually a legitimate push to try to show you different styles of wrestling around the world. Now, do I think they're going to bring out Kota Ibushi fighting a blow-up doll or Kenny Omega fighting a 9-year-old girl in Stardom? I don't think so, but I think outside of like the super extreme stuff, I think that's what they're trying to give you with, you know, the hardcore stuff and all the other stuff around.
Yeah, I think you know, if someone like Luchasaurus was to stay a tag team wrestler his whole career, I think that would depend on how well the tag team division has been established throughout the company's history. If the tag team division is this dead end that, you know, people get thrown in that, you know, they don't have anything to do with, of course we should transition people that show potential out of it. But if it's like a destination, I think that could be incredibly valuable, and that's a very underserved you know, part of wrestling. And, you know, one of the goals of this company has been, you know, we're going to show that tag team wrestling can be a main event attraction. And if Luchasaurus is part of that, I think that can only helps him that he's over like that.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I guess my underlying point is this: whether Luchasaurus ends up, you know, branching out and maybe having a Kane-like moment someday where he, you know, takes the mask off and becomes a 10-year running upper mid-card player who once a year has a pay-per-view main event, or whether he just becomes like a, you know, remembered like Smash or Axe from Demolition.
Oh God!
We need to get back to an era in wrestling where you don't have to go on to have a gigantic singles career to be a legend. You know,
I agree. Yeah, I agree, and I think one way they can kind of keep that from becoming there's a glass ceiling kind of thought on some guys is if you actually present the tag team titles in the division like on par, and also the women's titles on par with the men's titles, as far as like everybody is striving, whatever division they're in, they're striving to be the best in that division. Therefore, you have a lot of alliances and betrayals based off the fact that people are all, you know, or a lot of people are all greedy trying to get to whatever their the top prize in their divisions are. And then from there, you can kind of keep things, you know, with all the talent we think is going to come in and out, we think we can keep that sort of thing fresh. And also with all the tag teams they have, and then you even mentioned like the fact there might be a trios thing, you can put some of the tag teams that aren't even much doing anything into use with trio stuff. So yeah, I think we'll see eventually, but I think that's how they can kind of keep that sort of stuff from happening.
And they can also get guys in the ring together without having to pin them, like with, you know, designated pin eaters and such.
Yeah.
So up next, it was Omega and Pac. You know, it's going to be an adjustment for me to say that name. Pac with the shocking submission victory. Omega, I guess he passed out. Some of the camera work was kind of shoddy there. So, like, we saw a picture of Omega's ass during the submission, so I didn't really know what happened as far as the finish, but it looks like it was a ref stoppage.
His ass tapped out.
Yeah, essentially. So, yeah, man. So, Pac with the shock win. What did you guys make of this match? I loved it. I thought it was good. I think I initially had it at 4 3/4, but I dropped it to 4.5 because I liked the ladder match better later in the night. But yeah, what did you guys make of this one? And this replacing Omega and Moxley.
I think we all knew it was going to be different with Moxley being subbed out for Pac, and in some technical ways, I think that was always going to be for the better. Storyline-wise, the ability to tell an emotionally engaging story, I thought that Omega versus Moxley was pretty much the most anticipated match of the year, at least beyond January 4th. So knowing that, going in expecting this to be something of a showcase for Omega to perhaps better than he's had yet to date in AEW to an audience that maybe doesn't know the full capability of what he can do, that never did bite the bullet and jump into the New Japan Ocean. I think that Pac versus Omega was the best reflection we've seen to date of what Kenny Omega is capable of. But it's still, I loved it too, I did, man, in part, but the reason I loved it wasn't because of Kenny Omega. I loved it because of what it did for Pac, and I'm a big fan of that guy. I loved his presentation. I've probably said it on this show before. I loved his presentation on 205 Live. I thought he was fantastic there, and I was really excited he was going to be originally before Moxley showed up, a guy who I claim to be my fan anchor to AEW. Him getting subbed out for Double or Nothing was a blow to my enthusiasm. Him coming back, having this opportunity to do what he can do and showcase himself, I thought he was incredible. I thought Kenny Omega was good. I'm actually very intrigued to see where Kenny Omega goes from here story-wise, because they're setting up a very intriguing long-term arc for him. But in the moment, as a big fan of both guys, as a big fan of Pac, getting to see this showcase, it was great. That final stretch, I didn't think it was crisp enough to warrant getting into that all-time great kind of class, but definitely a great match. Definitely Kenny Omega's best in AEW to date, and I've got some mixed feelings on parts of it, because that botch there at the end on that Poison Rana really took me out of it, because you just don't normally see stuff like that in Kenny Omega matches. They're usually a lot more, despite the degree of difficulty being so high. I mean, the guys like Simone Biles in gymnastics, I mean, she sets her degree of difficulty so high that even if she messes up, she still gets incredibly high marks. I guess you could say that for this Kenny Omega match, but aesthetically it was great. I thought it was, just from an enjoyment factor, from what I wanted from a pro wrestling match on this night, I thought it was the match of the night. But still, there's a little bit of a mixed feeling about it, which is going to be a theme of my thoughts on this show, I will tell you in advance. So I'll stop rambling and see where you guys go with it, and maybe pick a spot here and there after it.
James?
Yeah, for me, I love the match. It wasn't like, it was something I probably gave 4.5 to. It just, for me, initially as it happened, just for me, I feel like I've seen so many Kenny Omega matches that it's almost like you can throw any of them out, and your judgment against the standard he's already set, so that's already kind of hard. But it was another great match. It's just, I almost feel like they're going. I understand putting over Pac, like either whoever won, it made sense for them to win. One, because Pac just got in, so why would you beat him? And then you also have the other thing of, all right. They actually showed wins and loss records on while people were coming down to the ring in the graphic in the bottom third, and they actually showed like singles record and overall record, and it showed like, okay, so he hasn't won a singles match, and then he loses again, and you're like, okay, so he's going. The story is he's going to go
beat
on a.
Shima.
He beat Shima, but he has a losing record now.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so now that means his story is like, how will he come back from this and eventually get into the title picture or what have you, or go on a run. So it's like, okay, I'm okay with that, but I thought for me, how many people are you going to have go out on a chase? Because, I kind of went into the Jericho in Adam Page thinking like, Jericho wins, and then you had set up and then, because obviously based off presentation on these shows anyway, Adam Page is not close to ready. They just threw him in there to be somebody that has a name and they can get some shot at being in the top match, but he's definitely not going to win it. And so you think like he could be the champion in like in like a year and a half or 2 years, maybe 3 years. But how many? So now you have that, and then you also have. But beforehand, also the Kenny things is like, okay, so Kenny's run is going to come, but now like I'm almost in my mind I'm almost trying to figure like when is somebody's turn to get to Jericho almost as opposed to just enjoying the match. But that's just separate from the match. I enjoy the match, but I'm just thinking of like, okay, so what's next? I'm thinking of what's next, and maybe I have to get out of that.
Yeah, this reminds me like in on BTE, like where they had that thing written on the paper, should Kenny be a jobber? Which is which made me think about that, and I was like, man, it's been a rough year for Kenny. He's done a lot of losing, going back to Wrestle Kingdom here. So we'll see what happens. I was shocked. I didn't think it was a bad decision or anything, but it was like, all right. Well then, I don't know if they're trying to book to throw the scent off, or I'm like, oh okay,
I would say this: Pac beat Kenny, so like Pac needs to be an immediate player.
That's the best reason to do this. I wrote on Twitter on Friday. I wonder if they've got the stones to put Pac over Kenny Omega. Thinking, if they do. Pac goes from a guy who was a cruiserweight champion in WWE to a guy who is undoubtedly a major player right away in AEW. So, I love the decision from that standpoint. I think the meta narrative with Kenny Omega is just as intriguing as the narrative they're beginning to tell on commentary and with his booking, which is, and JR mentioned it, I'll quote it almost verbatim. Did Kenny Omega leave his wrestling heart in Tokyo?
Yeah, and they portrayed him as like unfocused, like with the switch to Pac coming in, and maybe he has to recapture it by going through the roster, like by having him go out there. He has to fight Jungle Boy on TV. He has to fight Scorpio Sky at random. He has to go.
No. If he had started a bomb, he had started Marco Stunt. So. That's the bottom.
Yeah. But yeah, moving on. We've got the Cracker Barrel Clash. Now, Chad mentioned it earlier. I want it back as often as they can do it, and one of these three guys has to be in it at all times. Yeah, it was a war. It was a death match. It was, tacks, tape, barrels, chairs. What else did they do?
Steel steps.
Yeah.
A
awesome
skateboard with
match.
thumbtacks on the bottom of it.
Yes, forgot that one. An awesome hardcore
a
match.
nail gun or a staple gun.
Yep.
Paper cuts.
Paper cuts with the lamination. Yes.
Jeez.
Savages. the
I love that we live in a world.
Tribute.
I love that we live in a wrestling world right now where a match like that could be sponsored by Cracker Barrel.
That's awesome. It's just so awesome. I don't really know
come a long way, gentlemen.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to really say about this. So I'll just throw it to y'all. Like, this was a war. It was awesome. Go watch it.
Chad, you got some, or I can go because I have something.
Yeah, all I'll add is that I think that there is a market for this kind of wrestling match, and I think that AEW is smart to play into that. This is a modern, untapped resource in a mainstream way. So by all means, throw this out there as an other, because other works, WWE tries to trot out that 24/7 bullshit, and it's not that interesting. I mean, it's just not. It has a ceiling on what it can be. I think that this has a higher ceiling. I think that a hardcore genre, I love the fact, by the way, that Jimmy Havoc gets the win, because to me, this is the type of thing where it can just be this garbage brawl fun thing that they do over on the side, and fun is kind of a weird way to put it, but I mean, that's the way I interpret it, is fun. But they could also, you could throw someone in there against Jimmy Havoc someday on a major show and have it be this type of match, and beating him in his type of match could actually mean something. And I'm of the opinion that everything in pro wrestling if it's done the way that it could, if it's done in an optimal way, should mean something. It should mean something when you beat somebody. It should mean something when you step into someone else's environment and beat them at their own game. And I think that's the type of thing that they can develop that's into beyond just being something of a sideshow.
That would be awesome. They come out there and be like, you have to go fight Jimmy Havoc in a Cracker Barrel clash, and everybody knows that you don't want any of that. That's like, you got to fight Mick Foley in a hardcore match.
You got to go to Hell in a Cell and fight Undertaker?
Yes. Same type of energy there.
Okay. So, I enjoyed the hell out of this match. I was terrified and actually not terrified, but horrified for a lot of this match. Janela and Darby Allin are going to kill themselves. They're going I believe that I was told that Darby Allin is like at 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
If he keeps this up, he will be in a wheelchair by 30. Also, one thing to mention, because we haven't mentioned it yet, I don't know what needs to happen. I don't know what the setup of the arena is, whatever else. They need an extra 2 feet around the ringside area. During the Omega match, Pac clipped his foot on doing a moonsault off the top rope on the barricade, the steel barricade. There were issues throughout the rest of the night, especially in the ladder match. But while they were doing dives, I was just like, oh god, it's too close. The crowd's right up on them. The barricade's right up on them from what they're trying to do. So that the level of them trying to thread the needle also led to the I guess the horror of them doing the dives throughout the match. I thought it was a cool character thing when they started the match and Havoc immediately grabs a staple gun and he's like, "I'm crazy, you MFers," and then he staples himself to let people know he's actually really a certified psychopath. You think but you have no idea, that sort of thing. The staples the thumbtacks in the mouth, the casket drop. How did he decided to do the casket drop after that was the craziest, probably the most dangerous spot in AEW history to this point? He said, "I'm going to raise the stakes. I'm going to get a fake barrel, and I'm going to jump and do the casket drop onto the steel steps." So my question for you is this: is the casket drop Darby Allin's going to the top rope to get press slammed off the top by Ric Flair? Is he ever landed on anybody?
He's over 2 from what I've seen. So
it's going to elicit a big pop when he does hit it.
Yeah, his Kokeshi headbutt.
Yes, those are his disc and his vertebrae and his spinal column that are popping. I enjoyed the hell of a match, but please don't kill yourselves. Is that fair?
Hey, I had one mentality watching this, and it's something I actually heard Joey Janela kind of say. It's like, if he's gonna die, he's gonna die a legend. So,
oh yes, that's another one. Joey Janela does a moonsault to the floor. Nothing. That was the move. That was the move. I'm going to moonsault to the floor. I'm not going to land on anything or anybody except for the floor.
The floor. Yeah. There's another part in the match I like. I liked when I think it was he hit it on Jimmy Havoc. I think when Joey did the sunset flip Canadian Destroyer through the table. He actually did it at David Starr a month ago or something like that. So
I think he did it to Darby Allin.
Oh, okay. So Darby Allin. A lot of wrestling.
Darby Allin also takes that bump.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The what was it? The Emerald Frozen that's on the apron.
Joey Janela gave that to Darby Allin, I believe.
Yep, Darby Allin, Janela and Darby Allin did crazy stuff, but Darby Allin did stuff because of his build and everything, and there's not much padding on that build. You're just like, I don't know how this dude is going to be able to. I don't know how this dude's going to be able to get out of bed tomorrow. It just. There was also at one point I believe there was a brain buster on an open chair.
When's the rematch?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you one thing that I thought about during this match that had nothing to do with the hardcore nature of it is I had this conversation with Twitter with someone earlier in the week where they were talking about how they weren't all that impressed with AEW because they weren't doing a good job of building new stars. And I sat there and I thought to myself, you know who's a big deal right now who I never heard of before AEW? Darby Allin.
Yep.
You know who's a big deal of, who I'd only heard of in passing but had never seen before? Joey Janela. You know who's a big deal right now, who I'd never even heard of before AEW? Jimmy Havoc. The list goes SCU. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Luchasaurus, MJF, Nyla Rose. Like, I don't. People say that as like, look, like that's cool, but like you can't say that they have not been out here trying to build people. Oh, Shawn Spears as well. Shawn Spears is more famous for in the wrestling world right now than he ever was doing Pat Dillinger cute 10 stuff.
Yeah.
Now there is going to be an issue, I think, and this will be something that I'd like to talk about more when we get a little bit later on in the show and get up to that main event level.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of really talented guys. They've done a lot. They've done really well building a lot of guys up to a certain level. Now, who's going to get up to the tippy top level?
Into the top, at this point, the top 5?
Yeah. Who's going to get there?
Yeah, man. So our next match was the Dark Order and the Best Friends. This was kind of like the low point on the show for me. It was a lot of silence, droning silence that we often talk about, and the Dark Order stuff just doesn't seem to have, quite be curling right now. Kind of like Luther Vandross, like it kind of just doesn't quite, but Best Friends are really over. I haven't really been particularly impressed with their matches thus far in AEW.
Same here.
Like their performances,
they have good matches. I don't love their matches.
Yeah, it's like it's something else on the show, I think. And it was cool. Orange Cassidy kind of made this whole thing for me here.
Yeah. It was one of those matches that I felt like you watch the match and you're looking at it, crowd's dead for it. Crowd is getting up to go to concessions. They treated this like a death slot match. And you see them working their ass off. I'm thinking, oh my God, like this is a 205 match on a pay-per-view in the WWE. Like these people are working their ass off and is well done, but the crowd is not into it because they're not seeing the stars or seeing the people that they should care about for whatever reason, one way or the other, especially Dark Order. And then eventually, like, they're going to wrestle so hard the crowd eventually comes to it and is like, oh my God, they've been working really hard. Like, how about we get into it? And the crowd eventually got into it towards the end. You can say the same thing for the match that follows this as well. But I just felt like they kind of got left out to dry by putting Kenny and then that Cracker Barrel match before it. If they had swapped it around, I feel like those matches would have been better off would have been in a better position.
I do not personally understand, and this is going to be my hill to die on with AEW, because there's so many things I've loved about what they've done so far, but there is a recurring theme that has begun to emerge. I felt it the first night at Double or Nothing. I didn't feel it so much the second time around with Fyter Fest. I damn sure felt it during Fight for the Fallen, and I absolutely positively felt it to the point where I'm going to make a big deal out of it last night. These shows are too blanking long. There is no reason why AEW needs to come out of the gate and introduce all these people and have 5-hour shows with a full-on pre-show. You take this match that did have stakes, that were defined, where the team you're trying to build and an act that's already over, and you put that thing in the last match on the pre-show, and you just tell, with respect to Private Party and who'd they face?
Angelico and Evans.
And Angelico and Evans, you guys are sitting out tonight. There just was no need for a hot opener right before the hot opener. I'm not a big... Rich, you and I know we've talked about this on the Doc Says in the past, particularly when we were doing all of our pay-per-view to pay-per-view stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
You don't need... This pre-show concept of using a pre-show to sell the show, I don't understand it. I would love to see some statistics on it to see if it actually is helping people buy in. Because I'm not buying it as something that helps people buy in. I think when people watch the pre-show, they've pretty much already made up their damn mind if they're going to be watching the pay-per-view proper. So it's unnecessary. If you're going to do that much on the pre-show, then you got to shorten the main card. Take this match off, put it on the pre-show, don't have it at all. Or better yet, if you're going to tell me, as Cody Rhodes has been pretty apt to say, Yeah, we don't really have a problem with the length of the show. Well, I got a damn problem with the length of the show. It's ending at midnight. It doesn't need to end at midnight. This is 2019 when people's attention spans are shorter. What's pro basketball trying to do? They're trying to make the games shorter. What's football trying to do? They're trying to make the games shorter. Why are we getting into the baseball mode of letting things just escalate longer and longer? This more is more era across pro wrestling is driving me nuts. If you want me to commit to watching the entirety of a pro wrestling show, then take a match like this and just make it 7 minutes. Who cares if it gets to 3 stars? Just get the point across. The point is to put over the Dark Order. Do it more decisively. Get in, get out, and the show would benefit from it. That was my opinion of this match. You're right. They worked their ass off, but I didn't care because I was tired. I needed a break. I needed a promo. I needed a bullshit segment backstage or something to disconnect and disengage from. AEW needs to work on that. These shows are too damn long.
Well said.
I 100% agree. Like you start off like, okay, so match that should have been dropped. I would have dropped I would have dropped the Dark Order match. I would have dropped the not the SEU match, but the Evans and Angelico match. I would have dropped that. I mean, just because of the stakes alone, it's on the card. But if not for the stakes, I wouldn't have put on the Hikaru Shida and Riho match. I would have dropped that as well. There's no, if they, I feel like they have done a poor job with the women's division so far because there is no star that immediately sticks out to mind. They're just people that you know of because of things they've done elsewhere. But there is no person that has done something in AEW that makes you think like that person is a star in the women's division. Therefore, I love the talent in the women's division, but like unless they go start building somebody, like I'm not really enthused about them. So like based off of that, like those matches in theory, based off of how well they've been put together, didn't necessarily merit being on the card. But besides, so like there's a bunch of stuff that like you're right, just filler is put on there for the sake of being put on there for like one small reason that deserves to be on there. But it's like aside from that reason, based on interest in what you built towards it, like it doesn't actually really just merit being on the card. So yeah.
The only thing I can say about the length of the show is 4 hours is a really long show. If they can figure out a way to get to like 3.5 at max, I think that's like the sweet spot. They do. This was their last show for a month, and they do need footage on a lot of these people. That's probably the only thing I can think of.
That's cool, but like, do we need Adam Page to go 19 minutes with Kip Sabian?
No, that was a complete whiff. But
that's part of it. But that's part of it.
He should have
like,
dispatched him in electrifying fashion in like 10 minutes.
Right, but I mean, I'm guessing. I mean, in Chad, you can speak for yourself, but I feel like all of that stuff, all these small things here and there, where they're getting that's where the minutes add up. Where okay, with this person, they should have got 10 minutes. Let's give them 15. Oh, this should have went 12 minutes. Let's give them 19. Like this shit don't have to go that long. And you can't even say it's one of those things where like it's WWE where like between the segments and the video package is eating up is half of the time. Most of the time is in the ring. So the match don't need to go that damn long.
It's a lot of and another thing is it starts to get after a while. It starts to get a little monotonous because a lot of these matches are really similar in some ways. Like the tag team action, it's like, all right, we're going to go fast-paced, and we're going to build, and we're going to build, and we're going to build. Not every match needs to be optimized in what it can accomplish. Sometimes the point of the Dark Order match was to put over the Dark Order, so why do we need 12 minutes for that? And some might say it's picking nits, but it's not when it comes down to the point where you're really getting just these... You're drained by the first hour and a half being over, and you don't have a match that screams, this is the point in the show where I'm supposed to relax. Something has to take on that role. And unfortunately, the Dark Order match, which did have some stakes in a stacked tag team division, was along with the Riho match that came after it, that just naturally, you can't go up emotionally, and then not have something bring you down. And that's fine. I think that's okay. But I think it belabors the point when you are having these matches go long. And it's not to say that 12 minutes is long, but it's 12 minutes is long for what they were trying to achieve. So I feel like I could go on and on about that, but it's a tough spot. I think that, what I want to see, the final point I will say about it is, and not to beleaguer this whole thing, but the bottom line is one of the things that I need AEW to do as a wrestling fan, after feeling like WWE has been tone deaf for so many years, I need AEW to acknowledge that pro wrestling shows are too goddamn long right now, and somebody needs to recognize that that's a major thing, that nobody wants to be so exhausted by the time we get to the match that's supposed to be the most important match on the show, both live or at home, where you're having to stand up and pace the room because you're about to fall a freaking sleep. It's emotionally engaging, but it's overloading and overwhelming. And that's something that I think some of their main events, all but one of the 4 AEW shows has had a main event that suffered from a crowd that was wiped out. Jericho and Omega, the crowd was tired. I was tired. The only main event they've had thus far where the crowd was peaking at the right time was Moxley and Janela. That's it. That's 1 for 4. Something's got to change. Something's got to give. And it needs to, as I'm sure we're about to segue into the women's match, it needs to stop happening during women's matches, because that's a problem too, because it hurts the presentation and it hurts perception.
So we got, speaking of the women's matches, we got Rio and Shida. They had a match where the winner gets the championship shot on the first TV against Nyla Rose. Looks like Rio had won. They consistently mentioned she was 98 pounds on commentary over and over again, and I thought it was a cool match. I thought it was, it was fast paced, and I don't know necessarily how well it got over in the building. It got over better than Dark Order versus Best Friends, I'll say that. Definitely. And but I don't know if these two were the right two to be in the match. You could have pulled Britt Baker and Bea Priestley and put them here, seeing as they had actually had something started on the last show and a heated issue. But there's something going on that they're trying to do with their women's division, it looks like, and I think this is what this is just how the cards shake out. But I like the match.
Yeah, I like the match too. I gave it like 3.5, but I think the thing for me is the crowds are being polite to them because they know that they're talented wrestlers, and that's sort of the same thing with the Dark Order stuff. Like, they're not shitting on Dark Order; they're just being quiet, right? So for me, and I've heard people talk about this, like they're trying to give you different varieties of pro wrestling with the and by that they're highlighting the Joshis. Like the first match with the 6-woman Joshi match, like that was incredible, right? But I think the thing that they got lost in it is the reason why Joshi kind of stands out as this kind of primal thing is because you have women that are great at emoting. And Riho and Hikaru Shida, when Hikaru Shida, from what I've seen, when she's working underneath, when she's fighting Asia Kong, she's great fighting underneath as a babyface in peril. Great. But she's in there with Riho, so she has to, we joked about it, like, she is Shawn Michaels fighting Shawn Waltman, so you have to see the Shawn Michaels big man offense. Hikaru Shida's out there literally giving her backbreaker after backbreaker. And that's not necessarily, I didn't know this, but apparently that's not her strong suit, because there was no primal, just, get up, you're in danger type of feel when you watch some of these top Joshi matches that kind of stick out. Like, this was not, Rich, we've been doing a lot of Stardom. Was this anything like Hazuki or Arisa or Jungle and Momo, or I don't think you've seen Jungle Momo, or this anything like the top matches you see in Stardom? No, the matches are way above, because you have these women that you can see from the cheap seats that are just dying, that you live and die with them while they're just going through it. So
this is also a cold ass match.
I'm just like, I don't know.
It was a cold match. They had no type of build for it. They was like, hey, these two were fighting for the position. So like the crowd didn't have a reason to care about them, I feel like.
Right.
So
right. And that's on AEW.
AEW has not done a very good job thus far with its two major championships. Tag team division's going to be a different story. And that is a major championship. The singles titles.
Yeah.
They've not done well with it. They just haven't.
Right.
They've taken the least imaginative route possible. I mean, they may as well just said we're going to have a battle royal to determine the champion. It's just not that interesting what they're doing on that front, and that is on them. And I think I know you guys have been paying a lot of attention to what's going on with the Joshi women in Japan, but here's the deal. To me,
they don't cut promos. You don't know them.
The way it comes across right now is that the women's division is being built by a bunch of mid to late first round draft picks. And maybe there's a diamond in the rough amongst them, but I said this on my podcast last night. I hope that we don't sit here 6 months from now and feel like, man, AEW is probably sitting back there regretting that they didn't make some sort of huge play for one of these WWE women whose contract was maybe up. They need a first-round pick. I mean, they need a top 5 draft pick type right now for this women's division. They've got veteran contract-type players. Say what you will about Aja Kong. She can be a contributor, I'm sure. Maybe she can wrestle her ass off still. I don't know. That's what I've heard. But perception.
If she's in there with the right person that she can beat up on, she can go out there and have a 4.5-star match. Her and Hikaru Shida had a 4.5-star match late last year. But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's great, but why should me as an American as a person that has never seen them before, why should I care? Because I'm not going to hear their promos or hopefully they do it better than, let's say they take care the way that they used to take care with Asuka or Kairi or even Io right now in NXT. If they can do that sort of groundwork, yeah, but that sort of stuff that takes time. I mean, like, you're starting this off the ground right now. Like, those should be things that should be long-term plays, not like this is what we're doing right now.
I don't even think they should have done a championship for the women this soon. I think they needed to build the division, and at the end of the year say, it's time to crown the first AEW women's champion. I think they're making a mistake coming right out of the gate and just throwing the belt on someone, because that's what it feels like. It feels like they're just throwing the belt on Nyla Rose, presumably, after she took the loss to Rio on that show a couple of months ago. I think Nyla Rose is going to be the first AEW women's champion, and at this point, I couldn't care less about it. I hate to say that. I want to care about it, but they have not done a good job of building it up. They keep throwing these matches. The Joshi women in particular, have been thrown into these spots, very difficult spots, multiple times already in AEW's young history. And again, I don't want to be overwhelmingly negative. I'm just using it as an analytical point to make that, right. Hey, I keep getting to this point where women's division stuff's coming up, and I don't have a whole lot to sink my teeth into. They're not doing a lot, as you mentioned, they're not doing a lot of the promo work on the, or any of the promo work in the shows leading up to the YouTube videos they're doing. They're not doing any of that. It's just a week before, it's like, hey, this is going to be a match to determine one half of the first women's title match. Like, oh, well, I think Riho's which one now? And what's the other one's name?
Hikaru Shida.
And Hikaru Shida, she was in that 6-woman thing.
She's the one that had
nothing too, right? I mean, but that's where my mind's going. It's not going to. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm ready to see that. I'm ready to see her get up to that championship spot.
And I think this is one spot where AEW will run into trouble. Is I think they're under attack by a lot. They'd be like, people will start Twitter fires about like, oh, you don't have a women's division established. Like, they're trying to run and catch up those explanations. In an ideal world, it would have been like what Chad would said, but they're not going to get the patience for whatever reason, to get that.
I would have tried. I would have said screw it and waited for the right person to show up.
Well, I think the thing for me is, okay, so apparently speaking, compared to the rest of the world, all the top level stars in the world of women's wrestling are all in WWE, and they're all locked up to long terms. Like Becky Lynch. You look at the horsewomen; all the horsewomen are locked up for the long term future. If you're AEW, would you want to sign Alexa Bliss even if she was available? Would you want to sign Alexa Bliss to be the face of your division when you know she has to go out there and wrestle, and then you see someone that is see Riho, the other women in the division are all like well more experienced and better, flat out better wrestlers than her. Like there is a problem with what they have. Like I think that I personally think that nobody right now is doing a good women's division that is treating it as a ancillary division right now in professional wrestling. Like if you are a person that a professional wrestling company right now that is doing pro wrestling that has a tag division and a women's division that's treating like an ancillary division or whatever else, along with your single stuff, like you are not doing it well. Like the best thing I can say about AEW is they're not as bad as Women of Honor. That's about the best thing I can tell you. Like nobody's doing it well. So I mean, it's similar to when we talk about like, all right, name all the great tag team divisions in around the world right now, and the only thing you really think of is AEW. It's like it being done well right now. It's almost like that's the exception as opposed to the actual rule. So I don't know if we're grading it too hard, but they brought in a bunch of people that I believe that if they sat down and did the legwork like they've done with their mid-card with MJF and Jungle Boy and Havoc and Darby Allin, whatever else, they could get to that. But, maybe I'm overstating because, Chad mentioned like there is no person that stirs the drink yet. And I mean, that's absolutely true. So
we're working with the post Carmelo Denver Nuggets right now in the women's division. like they're all gonna have to like work together essentially. Yeah, like we're working with a bunch of like nines and stuff like, and you're like, maybe that picks up a book, but there are no jokers or kings out there right now and around the world. Like, and if they are that are available and aren't signed to WWE, they're in Japan. And good. I mean, and we're already dealing with that issue where we don't like, they can bring in Miko Satomura to go out there and tear the fucking house down if they wanted to, but they will have to present. It's all about presentation, but like they haven't even got to the point where the presentation is on point yet. It's just they're doing stuff, and I can see what they're doing with Britt Baker and B, right? But it's just like that's down the line when now you're doing a women's division. Like, if that's going to be your top few, then what are we doing here? I don't know. Like it's a mess. It's a mess of them trying. Like I see the effort, but like I see the heart there, but I don't see the mind behind it. You know what I mean? That's the way I can explain it. Speaking of presentation, we can transition to a presentation that was done well. Cody and Shawn Spears. So coming into this, Shawn Spears had been presented as like a completely new guy, a completely made over star. It's the history of wrestling. One guy being disregarded by promotion, and I'm going to show the world I'm the star I was meant to be. I don't think they quite got there in the match per se, because of they. There's the downside of these Cody matches. Spoiler alert: a lot of shit happens. Like that, it's just like, yeah. But when you talk about getting the crowd to react to people, and you talk about the entrances, like just the aesthetic of this match, I fucking loved that part. Okay, I'll go. So Cody, for better and for worse, his matches so far in AEW have been booked like the best stuff that, like some of the better stuff that his dad did in when he had the book in NWA. And by that, I mean, there's stuff that happens in these matches that elicit a initial pop because, or heat or whatever else. But if you're someone at home watching, once you see what they do and your immediate thought is the obvious why, you're like, what the fuck? So whether it was the All Out last year with the weird stuff with DDP just coming out and with whatever else, and I forgot what weapon it was or whatever else, or when Cody or
Dustin decide during the match for the Young Bucks to decide to turn heel for 5 minutes and then turn back babyface in the middle of the match, or it's just, or when Cody turns heel on his brother, and we're heel on his brother the whole time, and then at the end of the match he says, "I want my older brother." It's just, I don't understand the MJF stuff, where MJF is out there, he's a heel, but he's a baby face, or but his best friend's a baby face, or he admires a baby face, and then
he's plotting on him.
Okay, we'll get to that. But here's the thing: do you remember the Saudi Arabia match between Undertaker and Triple H, where they had Kane cornering Undertaker and you had Shawn cornering Triple H, and throughout that whole entire match, it's almost like Shawn is doing all the cheating for Triple H. Meanwhile, Kane's sitting there not doing shit. This was Tully Blanchard is cheating his ass off. He is having a 5-star cheat-a-thon, while MJF is just like a fucking stooge sitting there like, I don't know what's going on. So for me, but he's also a heel. So why don't you help him? What are you doing out there? So we'll put that to the side. Yeah,
MJF has not been trained as a manager.
Correct,
James.
He does not have his manager's license. Tully Blanchard, just out-coached him on every level almost.
Okay, so you have that on one end. Then another Triple H match. We'll do into that. Sting versus Triple H. DS comes out, helps Triple H cheat. So to even the odds, NWO comes out. But if you just think, wait, what? Because the whole entire story, NWO and versus Sting, they hate each other's guts. Why the fuck would NWO come out to help Sting? Why would Arn Anderson, the enforcer of the Horsemen, come out to help Cody's boy? Dusty's boy. That makes no sense.
They've got to explain that one.
That's and that's the thing. Where it got a huge
additional
pop
context
in the crowd.
needed.
It gets a huge pop, but if you just think for 1 second, what the hell? That it makes no sense. So for me, that's a lot of these Cody matches, and for me, just I thought Cody busted his ass in that match. I thought I thought it was a good match. I don't love the match. I think the match for me is something that just I can't embrace. My mind will not let me. But I mean, the crowd loved it, so it was a success. Whatever. So y'all can say what y'all want to say, but for me, it didn't do it for me.
Well, there you go. I think that last thing you said is probably the most important, and that's that the success, how you define success. It's, I think, going to be a big question you have to answer in determining how much this match really added to the show. Because from the standpoint of getting the crowd into it, certainly it did that. But it was I think the Sting and Triple H match at WrestleMania 31 is a great comparison. I was thinking of Ric Flair versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 18, not solely for the fact that Arn Anderson got involved, but for the fact that I was going into this particular match expecting one thing, and I got out of it something completely different. This was not an exercise in showing that Shawn Spears is a star.
No.
This was just like a vanity show for Cody Rhodes. And,
right.
He got his win. He got it decisively. But I feel like, man, this should have been the second match on the show if this is what this was going to be. I don't think this held up in any way, shape, or form as a main event. I thought it was fine in the same way that I think of Flair versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 18 is fine. It was fine. It was what it was. It was, one of those overbooked kind of matches. And in this case, I would not say to delight. I think it was overbooked to a point where whatever it is that they were trying to do in the pre-match build sort of got lost in the shuffle. So I guess I was expecting this to be Shawn Spears with an opportunity to prove he belonged in a semi-main event spot. And I certainly feel like what we got in terms of an answer to that question was a resounding no, he did not belong in this spot, because everything that they did in the match from a booking standpoint is the kind of thing you do to someone who doesn't belong in that spot. Cody has proven he's capable of more, so he gets a pass in my opinion here.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care about Shawn Spears all that much. I thought it was cool watching the road to All Out and seeing the likes of Tully Blanchard show up and and add his 2 cents to the Shawn Spears narrative. But at the end of the day, I'm not really into the Shawn Spears narrative, and I was expecting this match would make me into it. It didn't, so there you have it. I'm done with this. As far as I'm concerned, Shawn Spears can go back down to the 6-man tag team matches on the pre-show, and let's leave it at that. I don't see any reason to further invest a whole lot of energy into Shawn Spears at this very moment. If that was the point, then fair enough, but I never thought that was the point, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah, once they beat him, I was like, "Whoa, he's done!" Like,
Yeah,
that's. Well, I was like, "Well, he's done," because I do think something was there, and I think the aesthetic of this match was awesome, but it was like a good looking person with a host of psychological issues that like underneath it, that where it's like, it looked good, but there's a whole lot more going on here than I think is worth.
Yeah. So I'm glad that if Chad, like, honestly, like, if you had said that you loved this match and it was old school and made you think of like Monday Night War type stuff on his best in isolation, I've been like, okay, I can see how you feel that way, but it just wasn't for me. But I'm glad that you also don't enjoy this too. So or didn't love it. So I guess the thing for me is like, okay, so I felt like they did a good job with Spears from the moment he cut open Cody's head on accident with that chair, with that allegedly worked chair. So it ain't like, yes, it was work, but like you still gashed him open. So like, how worked was it? So yeah. So from that point when he won that 6-man tag match at I believe that was Fight for the Fallen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like it looked like this is going to be a guy that can be positioned as like he could be the top heel of the mid card. That's what I thought. Like that's where, like, once we get past this Cody thing, that's where a nice landing spot for him would be. Now, but I thought that like they would find some way to where he could steal the win thanks to Tully or whatever, what have you. This way now it's like, I don't know where you go from here. Like, does he just settle in amongst the mid card and like there's nothing for him to do? And I think there's nothing for him really to do now. Like he got sent off too easily, and then this was a project to propel Cody to a title shot. Cool, but I don't know if this accomplished. I felt like this was a step back for both of them, Cody and Shawn Spears. I don't feel like this propelled Cody in the way that they probably thought.
Cody. I don't think it did anything for Cody. I think it's going to be looked back at as, well, maybe this is harsh, and I don't want to be harsh. I think that this is a company that hasn't earned a lot of space for harsh criticism yet. They haven't done enough to me. They haven't put me in a bad mood on numerous occasions.
Brock Lesnar hasn't been a champion.
This is still for fun. So, but at the end of the day, we've been building to this match for 2 months, and Cody Rhodes matches have a role that they are designed to play as sort of the emotional heartbeat of these programs, and it just wasn't. It just flat out wasn't. It was not that. I don't think it was anyway. I think to call it that would be to apply a reputation of what Cody has done without taking into account what he did last night. And so to me, it's a wash for Cody. Shawn Spears now basically is positioned, I think, best to drop down back to the level that we all probably thought he would have been. Now, he does have the benefit of a good 2 months working a program with Cody Rhodes and having Tully Blanchard in his corner. But at this point, what's even the point of Tully Blanchard being there if this guy's going to be a really, kind of a lower tier mid-card guy? To me, his spot is to go put over guys like Darby Allin, who could use the boost, or a Jungle Boy, or someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it makes you think the wrong person won, because one dude's finished now, so seems to be finished. He would have to
wins and losses matter.
Like he would have to jump into something with Kenny or something to.
I will keep Kenny away from him. I think that there's a nice spot for after this Pac stuff wraps up for him and Adam Page.
Yeah.
Because you go out there and you have Pac beat Adam Page, and then after that, then you go Shawn Spears and Adam Page, and that's a nice third match on the card.
Yeah, so
It's Linsanity.
So the semi-main event, an absolute classic. The Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks for the AAA tag team titles, which I assume we'll never see again. But, however, we saw them last night, and it was an epic ladder match for the ages. These guys, everything if you close your eyes and you thought like, yo, what do you think is going to happen during the Young Bucks Lucha Bros match? Pretty much, it happened and more. I love the Canadian Destroyers off the ladders through the tables. I love the you're going to do it to my brother, well, I'm going to do it to your brother stuff. I love the, the Nick Jackson getting so desperate to where he would unmask, Pentagon, and then Pentagon making him pay the ultimate price for such a dirty deed with the package pile driver on the ladder bridge. It was intense, violent, athletic, and it was the best match on the show for me. So it was just like unfuckwittable. Like, so
Awesome. Unbelievable. I mean, I'll ask the question I asked when I was giving my sort of overarching recap earlier. Has there ever been a better stunt brawl caliber ladder match, like where it's just crazy spot after crazy spot? I mean, I can't imagine. How do you top that? How do you top what they did? I mean, it's going to be so hard to top what they did. Someone would have to almost die with what they do to top that. And I think that those little storytelling touches that you mentioned helped elevate it too. The types of things that will hold up on replay when you get down to the if you're going to do this to my brother, I'm going to do it to yours type stuff. The unmasking was a moment where you were like, oh, wow. I mean, that kind of took it to another level for me because aesthetically it was just off the charts. But you add in that storytelling touch and, I just can't think of many ladder matches that I've ever seen that were on this kind of a level. I think and in its own right, it's a match of the year candidate. It's different than any of the other match of the year candidates, but it's going to stand out because of its differences.
Yeah, I went 4 3/4. I wouldn't, if someone wanted to give it 5 stars, I wouldn't argue with them. So, James, what'd you think of this one?
In my mind, I'm trying to think of the best ladder matches I've seen over the last, let's say, 5 years. And what comes to mind for me is this match, the 6-man tag match or tag ladder match at Super Card of Honor in New Orleans from 2018. So that's I think that's Flip Gordon and the Young Bucks versus SCU, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the North American ladder match at NXT New Orleans or NXT TakeOver New Orleans. And I think maybe was that Chicago when they did or no
the final battle. It was like Briscoes, SCU, and the Bucks.
What show was that?
I think that was Final Battle last year.
I didn't see that. So I can't speak on that one. Sorry. And I think maybe the only other one I can think of is like the was that Chicago? DIY versus AOP, Chicago. Yeah. So like those are the ones that come to mind for me as far as like the best ladder match I've seen in the last 5 years. All those matches you can give you whatever you want to give them. Whatever, they're great in their carnage. I mean, you might want to give a shout out to like WrestleMania 32's Intercontinental Ladder match, but for the most part, like that's probably behind. But for the time, anyway, that at the time when you're watching it, probably that's. But as far as what stacks up, if I go back to rewatch it, those are the ones that probably come to mind for me as the best ladder match the last 5 years for me that I've seen. So I thought it was a great match. I thought that they did stuff that is absolutely insane. Was a Nick Jackson that basically got tipped over at the end and then basically got caught up in the ropes and ended up like falling through the table, similar to Seth Rollins and his first match at the TLC for the Shield.
Yes,
with against Team Hell No and Ryback.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's see how he's doing. So I thought it was a great match, and I hope they never do it again because I want to see these dudes wrestle for longer than tomorrow.
One day we will get the Nick Jackson singles run, and it's going to be electric and glorious, and hopefully he can wear the headband to maintain his youth.
Man, he needs to go holler at Jericho.
And speaking of Chris Jericho, the main event, Lucha Bros got the win, by the way, presumably ending that feud. One would think that would be the time to wrap that up. And
LAX showed up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What do y'all think about that? What do y'all feel about that? Because I thought after you have an absolute total war like that, like it's cool that they came out and announced themselves being there, similar to like Orange Cassidy making his appearance. But after you have absolute war like that, I almost feel like you're kind of taking away from the war you just saw to have people just come out and clear the house with these two exhaust people. Like, what did you prove other than say like we're here? Like, you could have done that by I feel like the impact is still the same as if you just show up and go face to face with them and just make announcements that like we're here now and like you two are the standard bearers and like we think we're on that level by just showing up and like getting the visual of seeing all three teams together as opposed to just beating the hell out of them after them having that all time, having a classic like that. I just felt like it took away.
If they stood out on the apron and just like pointed at them, or the stage and just like pointed at them like we're here, you could do either one. For me, that would have been, this was out of the school of Terry Funk beating Ric Flair's ass after he got done with Ricky Steamboat. Like, this is like the same kind of thing for me. So,
okay.
A lesser tag team probably would have made me feel a lot more like you on that.
Gotcha.
I love LAX though. I think
look, I've seen them have the Slammiversary match, the only match I've seen them have. I thought it was incredible. So I don't have it's just more of a, like, I feel like either you do the visual and then you kind of build anticipation for their programs later, as opposed to they just lay roughshod over these people that just were absolutely empty, you know?
If it's the Dark Order, I feel different.
Yeah, man. Somebody need to
Can you imagine if the Dark Order had did that?
Bro, somebody need to bring my dog Evil Uno to the seamstress. Like, we got to get that man some new gear. Like, I think that's half the problem. Like, the gear is atrocious. The minions, send the minions away. Send them away. Like, don't lock them in a room. I don't care. There's a couple ways to fix the Dark Order, but they're gonna have to think real hard about it. It's all the aesthetic because it's coming up real short. Like, they need to turn and I think this is another case where they're in the middle with something. It's like, go even fucking hokier with it. Like, give them like a Dungeon of Doom style backstory or something, or where they come from. Like, explain
James
something.
Mitchell out there to cut promos or something.
Yes. You know, get Kevin Sullivan on the phone and like, you know, show him anointing them as the next evil motherfuckers or something. I don't know. Like, but yeah, main event time. It was Jericho versus Hangman Adam Page. Came out on the horse. I lost my motherfucking mind when he came out on the horse, because I sat on this podcast for weeks and demanded it, and they did it, and I loved it. And I was just like, oh my God, put the belt on him. You know, Aaron Rodgers, full discount, double check, you know, waist motion with the belt. Didn't come to be, but I think these guys had an excellent main event, and it was something it seemed like they put a lot of thought into, because we know what, like, if we know what the story is, right, about this, I think they know what the story is too. Like, they knew Hangman Page was coming in here not hot. They knew Hangman Page had been compromising the booking ahead of time, because that's what the promos were about, essentially, like, you know, with Page. And, you know, what he did, like, I felt like during the match there was this portion to where Page got real aggressive with the opening up Jericho, essentially, and it felt like they were teasing a double turn. It didn't go through all the way, but that, I think, got people into the match, and Jericho getting the sympathy, it was like, okay, I really dug what they did there.
Mixed feelings, personally. I think that the whole presentation was great. The coming out on a horse immediately made that guy look like a superstar, and he needed it, because there are some people I've talked to leading up to this event, and we've had obviously 3 months to talk about, is Adam Page really, does he belong in this spot? I mean, he doesn't really seem like he seems like he's one of the fringe members of the elite, not an elite member of the elite. So, I mean, is
Tito?
this... is this guy really ready for this?
He's elite affiliated.
I hadn't seen him. So, sticking with that NBA analogy struck me as the type of guy who was, I don't know. Even if he ends up being like a Kawhi, then this is rookie year Kawhi. This is second year Kawhi. This is pre-finals MVP Kawhi. This is not a guy who's ready to share the stage with one of the greatest of all time and be hyped up ahead of time for it. If he comes out of nowhere to do it, that's one thing at this stage, but to be hyped up for 3 months as the guy who's going to face Chris Jericho for the championship, that was bold. So they nailed the presentation. There was a lot they had to get right with that. I thought Adam Page really worked his butt off. I think that this was comfortably the best regular wrestling match that Chris Jericho has had in a long time, that didn't rely on having to break tables and use furniture this was a more traditional style of pro wrestling match for Chris Jericho. This wasn't the type of thing that relied on the same kind of brawling that he used so almost exclusively against Okada in the main event of Dominion. It wasn't the type of match that he had with Kenny Omega. I like what Rich said about the thought that was put into it, because I think that not only was that thought evident in some of the booking decisions, but it was made evident in some of the sequencing choices. This reminded me a lot more of Chris Jericho's match with CM Punk a few years ago than it did anything we've seen from him recently.
Which Jericho, one in particular?
Particularly the WrestleMania match, where, it wasn't perfect, or even the one that he had in Chicago the next year. Just that kind of dynamic where you can see Chris Jericho's not the same athletically as he once was, and he can't pull off as crisply as he used to some of the niftier sequences that were once upon a time a hallmark of his game. But it was a vintage performance in some ways from him, and I thought Adam Page stepped up to the plate and delivered. And I was right there with Rich when I saw that tweet last week about the horse, and I think I responded to it. Yes, I want to see that. Give me the horse.
Yes.
And so when he comes out there on the horse, my opinion, I shared this on my podcast last night. I said, as soon as he came out on that horse, I immediately thought, my mind has changed. I want Adam Page to win the title. Put the belt on Adam Page. Jericho's an old guy. We don't need it on him. So my opinion flipped. So I found myself actively rooting for Adam Page to win the match. And though he did not, I think it was the right call for him not to win the match. Yeah. I think it was the right call not to put the belt on him. But I think he was made in defeat? I don't know that I'd go that far, but I do think that he definitely showed that if he can get the character stuff right in the coming years, it won't take him 2.5 to 3 years to be a major player for this company. He can be a major player faster than that. I think it's all about the follow-up now. It's about establishing that character. He's done what he needed to do. He had a great match in the main event. There were some spots in it that I thought were shaky, but this is the part I really emphasized on my podcast. By the time they hit the climax, by those final 5 minutes, I was all in on this match. I thought that they could have shaved off 5 minutes off the middle portion. Again, I don't think this match needed to be 26 minutes long. Just because you're on last doesn't mean you have to go long. Where in the rule book does it say that? I mean, my goodness gracious, you can have a match that goes 20 minutes that feels like 25 or 30. That's what Shawn Michaels did so well back in the day. That's what Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit did in their classic match at the Royal Rumble 2003. That match was not even 20 minutes long, and people called it a 5-star classic. Some matches just don't need to be that long. I don't think this one needed to be that long. I think it could have been nice, tight 20 minutes, and it would have been better for it. That said, 4-star match, definitely on the fringes of that, I think. But I really enjoyed it. I think everybody did well. Now come the questions, though. But we'll get to those. Match-wise, though, well done. Not all-time great. Not necessarily even what I want to see from AEW in a pay-per-view main event. But for what it needed to be, Adam Page delivered a heck of a performance. Chris Jericho held up his end of the bargain with a vintage-type performance. I've come around to it more now that I'm not exhausted.
James?
Okay, so If you just bear with me real quick, I will. Okay, so in my hand, I have a book called "The Greatest Matches and Rivalries of the WrestleMania Era," and it was authored by a guy named the Doc Chad Matthews. If you can see here. Okay, I'm going to slip through here. Let's see, 300 and 400 and let's see, what's the last page? 425 pages is his book, and it goes over all the greatest matches rivalry of the WrestleMania era, as it says on the title of the book. To hear Chad Matthews say that he was fully influenced by the fact that a dude that was presented as a dude that has no business being in the main event, showing up on a damn horse, changed his mind on the fact that he should be the champion, boggles the mind. I don't know.
In the moment, it's a horse. That's unique shit.
My only thing was the horse should have been white. The horse should have been white.
Whatever. Yeah. Whatever. Okay. I like the match. I thought it was a match that's somewhere between 3 3/4 and 4 stars. I thought that Jericho did a lot of great work between the moves to try to get over whatever you're trying to get over at the time. He was at the beginning. He was trying to show that he was still a cocky badass, and we kind of got to an extent between him doing the display of the abs of the 50-year-old dad abs in bringing the bell. Like we kind of got New Japan brawler Jericho at times, but while actually doing a straight match. It's just something. I feel like there's just nothing for me when it comes to Adam Page. It's just like I understand that he's very good. I don't see anything that says great about him. And even him coming on the horse, that didn't do it for me either. And I'm not saying this is necessarily all his fault, because as much as I feel like there's something lacking there, a lot of that can be explained by what AEW did as far as getting him to this point anyway so far, over the 3 or 4 months that AEW's been around. So, but I thought it was a good match. I think that it would have been a better match had it not just follow like the spot porn of all spot porn fests. So, but overall, I mean, I felt like the closing shot of Jericho on the stage with the belt, doing the wink or the smiley face, whatever it was, as they go to black. I feel like that was the appropriate thing, that pretty much the only thing they could have done, and with blood on his face. I feel like it's going to be a great visual for time and history. And if they think this thing lasts for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, like they will have set, from the time of the championship, they have set the right tone by having Jericho start out as their inaugural champion.
For me, and I put this on Twitter, and a lot of people are coming around on it, Chris Jericho is Buddy Rogers here. And
right.
Remember, this is a new promotion. This
right.
is this might as well be 1963 for the WWE, right? So, and you know what they did in 1963? They grabbed this guy named Buddy Rogers, and there's a complicated story behind it all. Rogers was a long-time draw in New York. Vince split from the NWA. He said his champion was one guy, but obviously his second champion was Bruno Sammartino, right? And then the thing is, your first champion establishing in this new promotion, it doesn't really matter. What matters about that champion is, are they recognizable? Are they someone that is a star? Is it someone that's a legend in Jericho? That's a bonus point. And now, who beats that legend for that title? That will be the the fall to however long Jericho has his belt. That will be the story of AEW. Who is going to be the next champion? And that, I look for that person to be the cornerstone star for the next amount of months, and possibly other promotion going for years to come. I don't know who it is yet, because they've got a lot of people like circling around. Like, you would think Kenny's the ace, but they're doing some story with him where he's not near the belt right now. Cody, you could send him in that direction, as he's never lost a singles match in AEW, but I still think there's questions to be answered with him. then there's Pac that's around, and you already got one heel in there, so we gotta figure out when he gets his time.
Moxley. You gotta mention Moxley.
You have to mention Moxley.
You do.
And then I think the only thing you want to establish is more of his time in AEW first. So
right. I'm just saying, like, you mentioned like the top. You're mentioning people in the top 5, but you've got the 5th or at least one of the 5 people. That's all. That's why I say you got to mention Moxley.
My fault. That Mercer, just took him on the show. I forgot him. Like so. But yeah, like as I mentioned, Chris Jericho is Buddy Rogers. It matters who beats him. So that's my take on it.
They have to also follow through with the other part of that, though, which is that Buddy Rogers was only the champion for like 2 months. If I'm not mistaken, Buddy Rogers was not long for the title. So that's the question, though, is who. I mean, and I don't like. This is where I say I go back to the mixed bag part of it. Is I don't like Chris Jericho being the champion, man. I mean, I get why he's the champion, but I mean, again, this is a promotion that's trying to both establish itself as a viable option for a widespread television audience, but it's also catering directly to a fan base that is god-awfully tired of seeing these old guys come in from the past and knock all the present guys back a couple of pegs. And I think they've put themselves in a tough spot. That tough spot is, okay, Chris Jericho's the champion. He's going to have that big, shiny, beautiful belt on October the 2nd on TNT. And then what? Because that's the key. What's next? I think in some ways the what's next thing is a disease we've picked up from WWE because we constantly need to know what's next because what's going on in the moment sucks. But AEW, we're talking about something that has the ability to build something week to week that's very compelling and to make it a wrestling show, a TV show about wrestling again instead of just a wrestling show that happens to be on TV. So Chris Jericho as champion leads to a match with Cody. I mean, okay, cool. I mean, but if that's the case, let's get there. Let's get the belt on Cody and let's move into the next phase in history. If you're going to put it on Moxley, let's do the same. I think this can't be a long. I mean, I don't even personally want to see Jericho be the champion through the end of the year because I'm a little overexposed to Jericho, having picked up the NJPW viewing over the last 9 months. I've seen about as much of Chris Jericho matches as I care to at this point in time. So I don't know. None of the options opposite Jericho really excites me. There's not a Jericho match I'm anxious to see. So I'm anxious to see Chris Jericho play his part and move on from the main event scene because it's not a spot I really care to see him. I want to see AEW have a shining, sparkling main event scene. There's a lot of guys that could be in that mix. The fact that Jericho is in that mix makes me feel a little ho-hum about the AEW title picture for right now.
Yeah, so the only thing I can say on that is, well, they weren't going to bring Chris Jericho and wait on him because we don't know how much longer he's going to hold up or, he's 48. So I don't know if it was a smart thing to go 2 years and then put it on him or something like that. I think
Why did he ever need
it? The prevailing thought, and I'm with you on that, because AEW has built itself like, hey, it doesn't need to be that. This is just conventional thinking of things that we've been told that we don't necessarily have proof for, but it sounds good. Like, you need a recognizable name. You need someone that's been, like, this is all stuff we've been told. But it's wrestling. You can do whatever you want. I think Jericho's a good option because if someone can beat Jericho, that's where, you go ahead and go forward with it. James, you're muted.
I believe they absolutely need Jericho on the roster. But as far as being the champion, I'm not really. I could take it or leave it. I don't really care one way or the other. If he can still give us really good matches. It's just the thing is, I tend to, I'm a little less like, I think that he should have the title for like the next maybe at the end of the year is when he comes off of it. But you need to right now be laser focused on whether it's Pac or it's Kenny or it's Cody or it's Moxley. They need to be laser focused on who's going to be the person that we set up a big match for. He takes the belt off of Jericho, and then we have Jericho fight the rest of those other three guys after that, and then go from there. I feel like a lot of that is a push towards, all right, well, we're trying to get people to watch this thing, and people know Jericho, and if he's a champion, people will be into watching the TV because he's a champion and Jericho's one of the greats. I really believe they're thinking on it. But does that mean he's be champion forever? No. Like you can only, I feel like you go on the TV, you give it a few months, and then you can move on to what you're really trying to do.
Yeah. Overall, I think I don't think you can call this anything but like a success as a show. Like they established a lot. There's stuff in the fallout. If you guys didn't see Chris Jericho walking through the back after he won the championship, just cutting promos on random people hanging around, clowning on the Bucks. So what's wrong, young Bucks? Like it was an all-time Jericho performance. He was spraying champagne around by himself, spraying it on people. If you look hard enough, you can find it on Twitter. But that was really cool to check out. But yeah, I'm excited to see AEW going forward on TNT, and I think All Out was a great show. And this is going to be an annual thing. It sounds like in Chicago, Labor Day, and they're going back to Chicago the night before Thanksgiving. So this is it's a home area for those guys. So I don't think they killed the town. So,
one thing I will say is, like, now that they're going to get TV, like, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about as far as, like, they haven't been able to properly do X, Y, or Z, like, there will be, once they start getting TV and have 2 hours to fill, there will no longer be an excuse of they only have a short amount of time to get from station to station. They will have a weekly station to station to get this shit accomplished to build up towards the next big thing they're going to do. So, like, soon they're going to have to start answering some questions, and I hope they're ready.
Chad, any final thoughts on the show overall?
Overall, I think I can best sum it up as it was a great wrestling show that really lacked that emotional punch that its predecessors had. And, obviously you can't expect every one of these shows to pack that emotional punch. But, it did what it needed to do. It was a great wrestling show. It left a lot of questions on the table. The only thing I can hope that we get to on TNT is some satisfying answers.
For sure, man. So that's going to wrap up the show. I want to thank Chad for coming on. Chad, let everyone know where they can follow you at.
You can follow me at the Doc LOP on Twitter. You can listen to my podcast, The Doc Says, on the Chairshot Radio Network. And the book that James mentioned, The Greatest Matches and Rivalries of the WrestleMania Era, is now available in audiobook format. You can get it on iTunes. You can order it on Audible. You can order it straight through Amazon. So check that out. If you want to just tweet at the Doc LOP, I'll actually give you a couple of promo codes. I'll pass those out individually. So if you want them, hit me up and we'll get them to you. So, yeah, and I had a great time being on the show as always, guys. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, man. James, anything before we get up out of here?
No, saw a lot of wrestling, and I'm going to, I guess, finish the day out by actually getting around to the Stardom show from last week that I didn't see. Hopefully these subtitles aren't crappy. But, yeah, a lot of wrestling, a lot of good wrestling, just a lot of it in – I'm going to go back and go over like the top matches or whatever else and try to, think more about what's going on. But, my brain's kind of scrambled right now because there's so much stuff I had to
watch. Make sure you guys are rating and review us on iTunes and everything, wherever you listen to the podcast. One Nation Radio on Sundays, Tuesdays, we got Keeping It Strong Style. Wednesdays, we've got the Ricky and Clive Wrestling Show, as well as Grown Man Watch This Shit every other week. We got Get in the Ring, as well as Danny's Chop Shop and All Things Elite. So make sure you guys are keeping it locked. We are up out of here. Peace.
Later.